Somebody present as whoever the presenter is. Are you speaking on mute?
Yes, I am. I have been speaking on mute for some time. Thank you. God, I just can't get with it today. It was really great stuff that I was saying too, by the way. So happy Monday. And thank you for that. That was a really great thing to mention, because I would have just kept on going. We're recording the session here. The normal caveat was that I stated when I was muted was that please drop if you don't want to be recorded. That was what I was mentioning there a second ago. So here we are. Now that I got my bearings straight and got things back together, today we're beginning keeping the business in mind. And what we're going to do is we're going to step into, we went over the people domain, we went over the process domain, and looking at the talent triangle, the process would be more around this technical project management part. The people domain would be more around this leadership piece, maybe kind of all three of these would cover all those. But now we're stepping into the business environment, which is the strategic and business management part of this. Those are the types of topics that we're going to talk about, and this is the lens that we'll be working through. So when we think about it, projects don't exist in a vacuum. Internal and external business environments can influence and affect the work of a project. So as a project manager, you need to be able to work through those things, and you work through them by managing the compliance requirements and ensuring that the project is delivering value and benefit. So keeping a handle on the change in both the internal and external business environments is your responsibility. You do that through managing change, and you do that through continuous improvement through assessment and implementation. So this will be kind of a new focus we're going to be talking about here. So let's look at what we're going to talk about today. We're going to determine necessary approach and action to address compliance needs. And then we're going to evaluate delivery options to achieve benefits and value. I'm going to go a little quicker through A because I have a feeling there's going to be more questions on B, and I'd like to focus there if you guys don't mind. So don't let me run through anything too fast. Stop me, ask questions. I don't have a backup today, so there's no one else that's monitoring the chat room, which is probably part of my confusion. I've got the participant list up. I also have the chat room up on one screen, and I've got some of the other things that I use on other screens. So thank you for your patience as I possibly make some mistakes today. I am human, in case anyone was wondering. So the normal stuff that I give to you guys, and in hopes that you return the favor through engagement and participation. So here's what today is all about. Everything that we're going to cover today is covered in the PMBOK chapters number 4, 6, 7, 8, and 11. You want to know specifically where we're going to be talking about items today. These are where you go. Go into PMBOK, look at 4.3, 4.5, and so on and so forth. And we will be able to, you'll be able to see the content of the topics. Is there anyone that would get value? I don't know if I can email this out or not. I would imagine I can. Get value if and I just thought about doing this. If I was to take this type of a thing and email this to you, or do you guys already have this in some of your content?
We have it.
Okay, great. Thank you. That helps. Here's the secret part that I give you guys. Again, remember, you have to participate because I give you this. 40 slides today. I got 22 on the first topic that I told you I'm going to go through just respectfully a little quicker, so that way we can spend a little bit more time on topic 2, which is 18 slides, and we do have 7 really exciting questions to talk about. What do you say we get started? So, as part of managing a project, it'll be necessary to maintain visibility into compliance requirements and ensure they're effectively managed throughout the project. In this lesson, we're going to determine the necessary approach and actions to address compliance needs. So our enablers are to confirm the project compliance requirements, classify compliance categories, determine potential threats, use methods to support compliance, analyze the consequences of non-compliance, determine necessary actions to address compliance needs, measure the extent to which the project is in compliance. And then we have the following deliverables and tools are relevant to address in this topic. Some of these may be included in detail in other sections of the course. So some of the deliverables we have is a risk register, configuration management systems, execution reports, non-functional requirements, sign-offs, QA, quality management plans, tools, risk registers, response plans, variance analysis, configuration management system, tolerances, escalation procedures, audit sampling, QA tools. So what are compliance requirements? Let's talk about it. Most projects have aspects of their solutions that are subject to legal or regulatory constraints, and as such, the requirements for compliance must be identified, tracked, and managed throughout the project. These can include requirements for specific practices, privacy laws, handling of sensitive information, and many other areas. Just a quick question, anyone on the call, anyone deal with these regulatory or legal constraints? Like maybe they're very obvious to you. I'm not talking about some of the stuff that we deal with HR, but in the process of your work, anybody dealing with a lot of these, or even some legal or regulatory constraints? Someone mention out a couple examples, please.
FCC consent decrees. We have to deal
Good
with
one.
a lot of.
Yeah, that's a good one. There's roaming restrictions, I see. Thank you. FAA is another one. Whenever I was climbing towers, you know, there's a lot of stuff that goes on there besides other historical types of things that we had to go through back in the day. Resolution time. E911 is probably another good one. So those are the types of things that we're talking about. Besides the government, you know, we've got certain, you know, spectrum restrictions and licensing and those types of things that we need to be tracking to as well. So thanks for those examples. I appreciate that. FedRAMP. Yeah, all right. Good stuff. Let's talk about risk registers. It's taking those types of things and what do we do with them? How can we track them? Most projects have aspects of their solutions that are I already did that. During the project, you have tracked and managed risks using a risk register. Some of the risks that need to be tracked relate to compliance with legal and regulatory requirements and should include the identified risk, the risk owner, the impact, and then the risk response, potentially including avoidance, transfer, mitigations, and acceptance of residual risk. Suitable testing and validation plans should be created to ensure that projects' deliverables meet compliance requirements. While many projects perform a summary check of compliance at the end of the project, it's recommended not to wait until then, and as any disparities identified may cause project time and cost overruns. Where possible, legal and regulatory compliance for all deliverables should be validated on an ongoing basis throughout the project. So configuration management systems. All the project's deliverable components should be tracked in a configuration management system, which describes the deliverable, defined key attributes of the deliverable, and allows for tracking, versioning, and control. The configuration information should be handed over along with project deliverables and will include or will continue to be tracked in the customer's configuration management system. Excuse me. One of the key attributes you want to track is compliance information, including proof of validation for each deliverable that it meets and identified compliance requirements. I would imagine those same folks that gave me those examples, are there formal audits by those regulatory or regulating agencies as well? Are there audits that you have to do yearly, monthly, whatever?
Yes, annual reports that we have to file.
Got it. Okay. So it makes this kind of stuff important. So good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So risk responses. After risks and their potential impacts have been identified, the project manager, along with other stakeholders, needs to determine the appropriate response. So risk responses can be determined in a number of ways, but often can be grouped as followed. So avoidance is the customer determines that the level of risk associated with a deliverable is too high relative to the level of value it will deliver, so chooses to scope it out. Transfer and sharing. If the risk is a financial risk, the customer can consider buying a bond or insurance from a third party that will assume the financial risk. Alternatively, some of the financial risk may be shared among stakeholders. We have mitigation. responses can be taken to reduce its likelihood, reduce the impact it would have if the risk were realized, or to reduce a potential vulnerability. If the risk is a positive risk, we can also take actions to potentially improve our likelihood of realizing the positive risk and gaining the benefits from it. And we have acceptance. Once the risk responses have been implemented, the remaining risk is called residual risk. This risk is what is accepted and managed, and ongoing actions should be taken to continue to manage these risks and identify additional responses as needed. So compliance categories classification. So relative to the legal and regulatory constraints a particular organization or solution must meet different compliance categories to be appropriate. There are many different types of compliance categories that may be necessary based on particular industry and solution scope. Some of them include environmental, workplace health and safety, corrupt practices, social responsibility, quality, process risks. The appropriate category for your project could be different based on your unique legal and regulatory exposure. Anything of particular note here that someone wanted to share, you know, as far as an example, maybe add to the value of the content? Okay, all right. So execution reports. Project managers regularly provide an execution report related to project activities, deliverable status, and overall progress. Included in your execution report should be the status of risks and risk management, including compliance-related risks and actions taken to manage the risks. These might include testing and validation activities, audits, or other actions to verify deliverable compliance with any legal or regulatory constraints. So let's take a look at variance analysis. Along with reporting on execution, project managers regularly report on any project variances along with actions taken to control the project and keep things on track. Variances related to compliance are critical as they could potentially impact the usability of the project's deliverables. The variance analysis should detail the variance identified, plans for bringing the project or deliverable back into compliance, along with any proposed changes required in order to meet compliance requirements. So let's take a look at some potential threats to compliance. There are many potential threats, and they're going to include identification of new vulnerabilities, changes in legal or regulatory requirements, errors in testing and validation to confirm compliance, errors or bugs in deliverables, lack of awareness of compliance requirements. You know, one of the things that really comes into my mind with this is, I don't know if we have any accounting folks on the line, but accounting, you know, GAAP processes, as those types of things change, you know, some of the, you know, SEC requirements, I would imagine that that's a pretty big item. That's, you know, projects at that level, and even the way that we do some of our things at our projects, whether we consider something capital or expense, whenever we're purchasing items would feed into that. Any other examples that popped in your head as we've been talking? Here's Shelley, you got a question, please?
Couldn't find the mute button. I just asked what your question was. You had asked everybody a question and my earphones were not in. So I was just asking if you could re-ask the question. And it was before you got into this conversation of the potential threats. So don't worry.
Oh, well, I think what was it? I forgot what it was now.
Yep, we had moved on. It's no problem, and we continue here.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay. Okay. Now I see what you mean. You said repeat and then question. Now I get it. It's coming together. I think I'm a little slow today. I don't know why. Maybe it's just Monday brain or something. I don't get it. Sorry about that.
It's all of us that are slow. You're on target and doing great.
Oh God, thank you for that. I appreciate the encouragement. Thanks. I feel like I'm stuttering and all kinds of cool stuff today. So let's take a look at some Non-functional requirements. So business solutions tend to focus on the functional requirements, what people need to be able to do to carry out work using the project deliverables. However, there are other considerations as well. Non-functional requirements are used to help stipulate level of service warranty of the deliverables. In other words, can you count on this product or service to be usable? There are many types of non-functional requirements, and they include availability, how and when the service is available, capacity, what level of service performance, speed, or throughput is required, continuity, if there were a disaster of some kind, how quickly could the service be recovered to support operations, security, how well is the service and its information protected from security risks and threats, and how do you guarantee the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of this information? So this resonates with me with some of the projects that I'm on right now. A lot of the integrated cloud, well, network cloud now, but as we work and we continue to transition more to a software-defined network, right? We have generic boxes out in the field, and a lot of the hardware that was doing work before is now done by software, and we continue to transition to that. But when you think about software, and think about your computer, you're looking at viruses, you're looking at information management, you're looking at all these things, capacity, how often is it available, what happens if service needs to be recovered. All these things come to my mind. Is there anyone else out there that maybe has similar programs that they work, or maybe even a different type of program that would share the same types of non-functional requirements? Oh, you guys are an active bunch today, I'll tell you what. All right, you guys can do this on the first part, but we're gonna talk more on the second one because I expect more questions over there. Maybe this stuff is I don't know. Maybe it's just not bringing any questions to your mind, but I feel like the next section is going to. So I'm gonna let it slide here. I'm gonna continue to try, but I'm gonna let it slide. So you guys will catch on here in a second. So sign-offs and approvals. For each of the compliance requirements, unnecessary stakeholders must be identified to sign off and approve that the solution and the different deliverables within it meet the compliance requirements. This may be a very long list, depending on the type of project and the scope of approvals and sign-offs required. While many of these approvals may not be possible until shortly after the project completion, many others may be subject to testing and validation on an ongoing basis. This can be very helpful as it will provide you with an early warning of potential threats to compliance, allow you to capture the variances and determine an appropriate course of action before it impacts the project timeline, causes cost overruns, or creates large project risks. So tolerances. Tolerances. This is defined as the quantified description of acceptable variance for a quality requirement. When establishing controls for a project, it's often helpful to provide tolerance levels for the project manager to effectively manage certain issues and control the project without having to escalate every issue to the board for review and approval. Areas of tolerance might include budget, time, quality, and non-functional requirements. For example, you as a project manager can control issues with a budget or time variance of less than 5%, and then be required to escalate any variances that exceed that threshold. Are there any other examples of tolerances out there? Six Sigma folks, if there's any of green belts, white belts, whatever, yellow belts, whatever kind of belts you are, is this something that resonates? Anyone else work with tolerances? No? Nobody? We actually had metrics whenever I was in Six Sigma training. We had metrics that we would use to measure, the upper control limits, lower control limits, and those types of things, to measure if a process that we're examining is out of control, then we have some activity. But as we continue to work on it, we continue to monitor it. Once it becomes in control and within either some control limit or some spec limit of a customer, we've effectively met our objective when we start beginning to have different discussions. So those are the types of things that I would imagine would fit into the tolerance categories. You got spec limits, you got control limits, you have variances of, like the example that, I just provided here would be, if there's, like an example would be, I don't know if it's a percentage or a dollar amount in our funding systems. I have the approval. I have the authority to approve things up to a certain limit. It's not much, but I don't have to go through this huge review process in order to get that type of expense approved in my project. So those are the types of things that I would imagine would fit within this category that we want to track to.
Hi.
Yes.
I was over the weekend, I was going through the quality chapter on Rita's book, and it talks about design that allows 2% of like spillage because it's like a machinery, railroad type of thing. And the question was more towards like, where would you document for it to be either 2% or under, where it needs to be notated. So from like the project quality management plan and such. So a lot of the questions here, where these tolerances or those thresholds will be listed. Just wanted to add that.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're talking about here. It would be this area, these compliance topics and these registers where we'd be able to list that. Yeah, good add. Thank you, Mona. Any other contributions, please? Hey guys, by the way, jump in. I don't have anyone else watching me, so Mona, it was completely okay what you did. Jump in and have at it. Let's have a good chat here.
Was that a question she was asking? I thought it was a question as to where that would be documented.
So that was one of the practice questions that showed up on the exam wizard. And it actually happened to be a question at the end of Rita's chapter as well. Should have put the two together before getting it wrong. It was just asking where those type of things get listed, part of the project for the document. Just making a statement.
What was the
correct
answer?
Yeah, what would you answer?
It was under the quality management plan.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
No
good stuff.
problem.
Yeah, thanks, Larry, for jumping in there. Anything else, please? All right, so we've got some guidelines to analyze the consequences of non-compliance. During the project managers need to identify and manage legal, regulatory, and other compliance requirements. Guidelines for analysis include define the legal, regulatory, and other constraints, and define the business rules based on compliance requirements that will constrain the project solution and improve the likelihood of maintaining compliance. Define parts of the potential solution subject to compliance requirements, the scope of the compliance requirement, and the stakeholders responsible for reviewing, approving, and signing off on compliance of the component. Track and manage the review and approval activities related to project requirements, and then track and manage the risks and risk responses related to compliance requirements. So we're going to take a look at the quality assurance outputs. So as the project team produces deliverables, quality assurance, QA, will review the deliverable, verify that it meets both functional and non-functional requirements, and often identify and suggest potential improvements. QA will validate whether deliverables align with compliance requirements and provide feedback on any variances identified and potential approaches to cure any defects or other non-compliance. As the project manager continues, the project manager will want to monitor the QA reporting and recommendations and coordinate with the project team to address defects or manage any identified non-compliance issues. This seems very agile to me. Anybody else? This type of thing? meeting specs and meeting these types of things on an ongoing basis seems very, while we can monitor it, through the standard waterfall process and predictive process, a lot of this seems a little quite agile to me. Where am I at? Escalation procedures. When a non-compliant issue is identified, the next step is to determine whether it is within or the tolerance level of the project manager. If it's within the permitted tolerances, the project manager can work directly with the team to propose changes to resolve the variance. If the non-compliant issue exceeds the tolerance, the issue must be escalated for resolution. For any particular compliance requirement, you should identify the stakeholders who will review the non-compliance issue and adjudicate how the team should proceed. Given the need for timely feedback and the desire to cure the non-compliance as quickly and cost-effectively as possible, the procedures for such an escalation should be defined during project and risk planning. So we're going to take a look at the quality management plan. We're almost nearing the end of this section, guys, so stick with me here. Quality management plan describes the resources and activities needed for the project team to achieve the necessary quality objectives and is an appropriate place to set expectations for the project's quality requirements. Some things that are in this quality management plan include the quality standards to be used, quality objectives, quality roles and responsibilities, project deliverables and processes subject to quality review, the quality control and quality management activities planned for the project, quality tools, and the major procedures relevant for dealing with non-conformance, corrective action procedures, and continuous improvement procedures. Audits are used to verify compliance with organizational policies, processes, procedures. Generally, they are conducted by a team external to the project, such as an internal audit team or PMO. Audits are generally used to do the following: identify that all good and best practices are being used, identify any non-conformity gaps and shortcomings, share good practices from other projects and the organization of the industry, proactively offer improvements to improve productivity, highlight contributions to lessons learned. Any remediations should reduce the overall cost of quality and increase customer acceptance of the project's deliverables. They may also be used to perform implementation of change requests, including updates, corrective actions, defect repairs, or preventative actions. Are there anything that anyone would be able to contribute in the area of audits, please? And maybe how it was completed? Something that's happened, the project areas that I'm in is I don't remember who did the audit because I wasn't part of the team then, but the result of the audit I can see. It had to do with project tracking and project controls, and then issues and depths and those types of things. There were some audits that were completed, and I guess opportunities for us to be able to improve quality, improve throughput, and improve predictability. And it required us to be more diligent and thorough in jeopardies and issues and change control, and really tracking against cycle times when there were deviations. Why did it take longer than your agreed SLA? And what we were able to do through that is have discussions ahead of time, be able to anticipate risk and issues when we know that there's going to be more work coming to a team that has shorter SLAs and limited resources in order to keep them off of these reports. So yeah, again, it's just really just a function of us being able to be more transparent in how they were performing to their agreed cycles.
Hey, Will, I have a question. Would you say
Sure.
that now that we do much more agile project management type projects, would you say that we do a lot of audits I know, or I can kind of see how when we were doing more of the waterfall type project management type methodology, the audits were really important and they were, kind of people really held to that standard. But now that people are on this agile project management, do you still see audits? Like, I've not seen an audit.
Mhm. How about someone that is working agile projects, help support? Let's engage here, because I like the question. I'm not the strong agile guy. So someone on here that works agile projects and has storyboards and sprints and all that stuff. How do audits and compliance and those types of things work in those types of projects, please? Is there anyone on the call that has an agile project, please, or as an agile project manager, or is on a Scrum team, or is working software development? Jamel, let me follow up on that one, please. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, this is Larry Vasquez. I've been in the engineering organization for about 10 years now, and even though we never called it agile, it seems like that we were following a similar practice. What we do is we engineer various products and services to the network, network designs, and we do have an internal quality review team, but we will get audited. Usually they tell you at the last minute so that you don't prepare too much, but they ask you to put together some projects that you think, like a sampling of projects as we just covered. So it kind of includes a broad spectrum of the different types of design techniques that we use. And what they do is they basically review each one. They go out in the field and inspect. So it's a combination of both the engineering design and the execution from construction to actually, implement or deploy build the network. And what they do is essentially score you on various aspects of the design and or the construction portion of it. And they use that for you to, to either, tighten up or remind, refresh, if you will, the various stakeholders involved as to what the standards are. And, you certainly don't want to score too low because, that reflects on your organization. So they basically uses feedback, not only for the engineering organization, but specifically for the reviewers as well, to be on top of it and know what the expectations are and how to ensure that it's communicated throughout the organization so that everybody's following the approved standards.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Larry. Appreciate that. Thanks for jumping in. Does that help, Jamel?
Oh, sure.
I would imagine there's a million different examples as well. Good to know that, what the example from AT&T is. So, I do like the question.
Yeah, that was helpful. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. So sampling, it may not be viable for quality assurance to inspect every single product. Larry just spoke about this. So they took a sample. An appropriate sampling approach can provide similar results in identifying their quality issues and reducing the costs of quality, thus helping to better align the quality assurance costs with the overall value to the project. Statistically, you're going to end up with, you're going to find outliers and those things, right? Like Larry mentioned, they'll select a couple, give you a little bit of, if any, notice that they're going to do it, and go about their way and completing their audits there. So QA tools. Quality management teams might use a number of tools and practices to identify quality issues. They include data gathering, which often uses checklists and other lists of acceptance criteria. Data analysis, including alternatives analysis, document analysis, process analysis, or formal root cause analysis. Decision-making techniques, data representations such as affinity diagrams, cause and effect diagrams, flowcharts, histograms, matrix diagrams, and scatter diagrams. Audit reports that's designed for X to focus on a particular value X and its impact on design quality. Problem-solving techniques, quality management methods such as Six Sigma and Plan, Do, Check, Act, or PDCA. Anybody have any familiarity with any of the tools that we've talked about here with QA? Cause and effect diagrams, a fishbone diagram, flowcharts, 5 whys. Okay. All right. Well, remember what I said last time we talked. When you see the guideline slide, that means that we're about at the end of a particular section, right? So does that make anyone happy with this one? So when assessing project compliance, it's useful to leverage quality management to both validate compliance and identify non-compliance issues and potential corrective actions. Use QA outputs to confirm deliverable and process compliance and identify the need for corrective actions. Establish project tolerances and enable the project manager to either initiate corrective actions within tolerances or to quickly escalate any non-compliance is outside of tolerance. Establish a clear quality management plan and execute it on an ongoing basis. Establish where external audit teams can confirm and validate use of appropriate processes and procedures, and how to audit results can enable the team to identify improvements. Leverage effective QA tools and techniques to assess quality deliverables and identify improvements, corrective actions, or defect repairs required. So that's the end of that section. I tried to make that as fun as possible, and that was a tough one for me. Anything resonate in there in that section, please? I'm happy to go over anything we need to go over again. Anything good or bad? Some of you guys, I would imagine you want to keep going, right? Patrick, go ahead, please, sir.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it was definitely a good section, but I know on the auditing aspect that you were talking about, I mean, you hit on all the points I was gonna kind of bring up during that
Okay.
part, but it's, I definitely found with some audits that we had some compliance issues with my old department, and we went back, reevaluated the process, and tightened up some of the controls to make sure that we're in regulatory compliance on some items.
Very cool.
But yeah, it's definitely a worthy process to do your audits.
Yeah. Thank you. I agree with you. Thank you for your contribution. Is there anyone on the call that has actually been a part of an audit team and actually did the audits? There's almost 70 people on this call. There's got to be one.
I was. I was on the compliance team and did pre-audits.
So from that lens, how does this resonate with you? You may have a unique perspective here. Here's why we did it. Here's how we did it. Here's how we measured tolerances, and here's how we, if it was good, we did this. If it was bad, do you have any good in evaluating content for this?
If it was good, of course we passed it on and we were happy with it. If it was Not good. We offered our suggestions to those departments that we were auditing so that they could perhaps pass the audit before when it went to that point. So
were most of the items that you were auditing, were they quantitative or were they qualitative?
It depended on the audit.
Oh.
So there were times when it was quantitative, like if it was a profile audit, it could be quantitative because it would be how many profiles were out of compliance. Or how many systems were out of compliance. So that would be quantitative. And we would talk to that and how that would have happened and what could we do to tighten those controls.
I would imagine the qualitative assessments would be a little more difficult, right?
Right, because there would be more parameters around that.
Okay.
Seem more subjective if it's qualitative.
Correct.
Now, one of the things that I don't think was mentioned is that in an audit, you can always push back and counter some of the results because there's probably extenuating circumstances, and if that was not communicated in a general or is known, then that would be the opportunity for you to communicate that, and many times they reverse their positions on the results. Just an FYI.
Interesting.
Yeah, they would label it more of an observation or recommendation rather than an actual finding.
Correct.
Okay. Interesting.
And that's why we started the pre-audits in order to find those things ahead of time so that it wouldn't take as much of that time to, so we would pass those audits and not have that go back and forth and come back 6 months later and make sure that you followed those findings.
Genius. It's a great idea. Get ahead of it. I like the idea. Good. Lynette added value here. She said she's in audit services. Pushing back requires evidence to support it.
Right.
Thank you, Lynette. Interesting. That even adds more value to me of the pre-audit. If you have that opportunity, especially if there's known schedule for audit activities and you can get ahead of that, that's really great stuff. All right, so we're at the normal spot where I ask the normal question that people respond before I even finish asking it. But anybody need a break? Or are we going to push on?
No.
All of a sudden, everybody wants to talk. Yeah. There's everybody. Yeah, that's just great. Oh, man.
How many slides are we talking?
This one has 18 slides, and then we have 7 questions. And we'll do it together. Multiple choice, by the way. All right. Those that are speaking up for the entire group, so we're going to go. All right, here we go. We're going to talk about evaluating and delivering project benefits and value. A project is undertaken to meet the objectives and requirements of its stakeholders, and the project manager is responsible for delivering what these stakeholders expect. A number of tools are available to assist the project manager and project team. Here are the enablers for this section. We're going to build shared understanding of project and value, investigate that benefits are identified, document agreement on ownership for ongoing benefit realization, verify measurement system is in place to track benefits, evaluate delivery options to achieve benefits, inform stakeholders of value being delivered, evaluate the impact to the organization, and determine required actions. There are some deliverables and tools that are associated with this topic. Deliverables include benefits management plan, EVM. Who can tell me what EVM is?
Earned value management.
All right. Who can tell me what ETC is?
Estimate to complete.
Woohoo. All right. Who can tell me what ROI is?
Return on
investment.
Let's see how fun this is, guys. How about NPV?
Net present value.
Oh my, everybody here. IRR.
Internal rate of return.
Oh my gosh, you guys are awesome. Benefit cost analysis, decision trees, EMV. How about that?
Or market value.
I don't know if that's right. It may be. I think it is in a different context. It's expected monetary value. We're going to talk about that in a second. But I do believe EMV might be an acronym somewhere else too. We'll go over it in a second. That's why it's with decision trees on purpose. Decision trees, comma, expected monetary value. We have the Monte Carlo simulation, Net Promoter Score. Anybody ever heard of that ever at AT&T? When I was in school, I was at a residency, and one of the lead faculty says that he hates Net Promoter Scores, one of the most useless tools that are available that everybody is using. It was interesting perspective, if that. I've never heard anybody, because AT&T, I guess a lot of companies really depend on this, and so we'll go over that as well. We've got A/B testing. We're going to assume that the Net Promoter Score is a value add, by the way. There are multiple opinions and most of the things here. So A/B testing, tools, value analysis, cost analysis. So here we go, business value. Business value is an informal term that goes beyond economic value. Components of business value include shareholder value. In a publicly traded company, part of the capitalization that is equity as opposed to debt. For example, the number of outstanding shares multiplied by the current share price. Customer value, the value received by the customer. Employee knowledge, an asset of the business, frequently overlooked. Channel partner value, the value of business partners. Value analysis. Value analysis is the process of examining each of the components of business value and understanding the cost of each one. The goal is to cost effectively improve the components to increase the overall business value. See why this section is in that business domain? Very business stuff. So business or benefits management plan, it's a document that describes how and when the benefits of a project will be derived and measured. It includes typically target benefits, which are the expected tangible and intangible benefits or business value to be realized from the project. Strategic alignment, how the benefits align with the business strategies. Time frame when the business benefits, short-term and long-term, will be realized. Benefit owners, person or groups that monitor, record, and report benefits. Metrics, direct and indirect measurements, and risks associated with achieving targeted benefits. This plan is prepared before this project is initiated and is referenced after the project has been completed. It is not a subsidiary component of the project management plan, but instead is a business document. Sprint reviews, demos. For the Agile folks, in an Agile project, at the end of each iteration or sprint, the team will host other stakeholders and conduct a sprint review or demo. Part of the purpose of Agile approaches is that the team is focused on completing whole user stories in each sprint. In other words, everything is done and the capability is potentially shippable. At an early stage, the team wishes to gain acceptance of the story from the product owner because it should meet all the defined acceptance criteria and to get early feedback from other stakeholders, which may unearth changes or additional undefined requirements. Sprint review then is used to review progress on the overall product and to get feedback early while it's still relevant. If certain aspects of the solution need to be changed or enhanced in certain ways. What is it? Fail fast, fail early, fail fast? One of the key terms. Fix fast, fail fast, fix fast.
I thought it was fail fast forward.
There you go. I knew there was something like that. Thanks, guys. I was on the ballpark, I guess. So release management. One of the fundamental benefits of Agile projects is the ability to convert high-value capabilities into delivered solutions early. Part of the job of the product owner in an Agile project is to define the initial capabilities make up the MVP. Who can tell me what MVP is?
Net present value.
Isn't the minimum viable product?
That's it. That's it. MVP. Sorry, M sounded like N, so I understand that first response, but it's M, minimum viable product. In short, enough solutions to start using it and start generating real value. So that's your minimum viable product. In a traditional project, release occurs at the end when everything is done. In practical terms, virtually all solutions have an ongoing life cycle so the idea of being forever done with a solution is largely a mirage. Agile approaches acknowledge this and instead substitute the notion of minimum business increment. The MBI offers enough of the high value aspects of the solution to start using it and get benefits from it. You can then define an approach to subsequent releases of the solution, which may be driven by the following. Availability of a certain set of features or capabilities, organizational tolerances for changes, a time cadence specifying that subsequent releases are planned on a consistent schedule, such as one per month. This is where we get into some fun stuff. So let's talk about some business analysis tools. This is the fun stuff that I think we're going to have a little bit of, spend a little time on here. So benefits or benefit cost analysis, also called cost benefit analysis, is a systematic approach to estimating the strengths and weaknesses of alternatives used to determine options which provide the best approach to achieving benefits while preserving savings. The goal in a benefit cost analysis is to select the alternative whose benefits outweigh its costs by the most. An alternative whose cost exceeds its benefit should never be chosen. The value of a benefit cost analysis depends on the accuracy of the estimates of cost and benefit. Who can provide an example, and it can be in your personal life as well, where you may have, whether it be formal or not, applied a benefit, or let's call it, I'm used to saying cost benefit analysis. Who's applied that? Give me an example, please. Anybody bought a house, bought a car?
I got, or not a house or a car,
George.
but so sometimes I do, in my position, I implement voice and data. And so sometimes a site will require a fiber build that can take up to 6 to 9 months, which is well outside of the expected turnaround. So sometimes we'll implement a wireless solution like 5G or 4G LTE, depending on the latency and speed available in the area, while the fiber build is going on, so that way we can migrate the services sooner.
Okay.
Of course, that's where the cost can come into play, and how is it worth it and stuff like that.
That's what I was just going to ask. So you had to make a decision, right? The fiber is going to be 6 to 9 months, but we need it sooner than that. So what can we do in the meantime? So you had to say, is it worth, so we got enough revenue coming in if we able to spend the money to deploy a quicker solution? That would be what you're comparing, right?
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. That's a good example. What was the other one? There's someone that was going to speak up. Okay. All right. That was a good example. Thank you for that. So return on investment, ROI, it's a financial metric of profitability that measures the gain or loss from an investment relative to the amount of money invested. It is sometimes called the rate of return and is usually expressed as a percentage. A positive ROI is interpreted as a good investment, and a negative ROI is a bad investment. Are there any questions with this one? I think this is probably, of what we're going to talk about here for the next 20 minutes or 30 minutes or so, it's probably the one that's most known, most recognizable. All right. All right, the idea of it is to make a gain. You know, the highest ROI. If you had multiple, let me do it this way as well. When you take a look at benefit cost analysis, you take a look at ROI, I would imagine, I doubt that the exam is going to be asking us, please measure ROI of this. It's going to say something to the effect of, you know, it's a scenario. You have project X with a return of investment of this, and project Y with an ROI of that, and based on this, which project do you select? Something to that effect is what I would assume it's going to say. You need to understand what ROI is. Is a higher value better, or is a lower value better? And when you compare things together, do you select the highest or the lowest? It's that type of stuff that you need to know. And of course, you select the highest ROI. If that's all you're measuring, you select the highest ROI. Those are going to make our finance folks very happy. If there is a finance person on the call that wants to challenge that, I'm happy. I have no shame in my game of being wrong. But I would imagine they're looking for the highest ROI. Now, let's take a look at present value. Present value is the current value of a future sum of money or stream of cash flows given a specific rate of return. Another way to think of it is the value of something today that you need to create. Let me say this again. Another way to think of it is the value of something today that you need to create a certain amount of money in the future at a specific interest rate. So here's an example. Here's the formula. Again, I don't think you guys need to memorize formulas anymore, not this kind of stuff. All you'll need to understand is what present value is. And maybe they give you, I don't know what they're going to give you. I just don't see, I don't know if there's anyone on the call that's taken the exam. It's been a long time for me, more recently. I just don't remember hearing any stories of, oh, you got to know the present value formula. You just need to know what present value is and why it's important. So if you need $3,000 in 3 years, right, that's this top number, future value, FV, you can invest your money at 8% interest. The present value of your initial investment is calculated. So $3,000 is your future value on top. 1 plus your rate, your interest rate, which is, they told you, is 8%. Your function here is 3 years. So in order to have $3,000 in 3 years, today you need to invest $2,381 and hope for an 8% interest rate. Or plan on an 8% interest rate for 3 years. That's how you get to 3. I would imagine that this is also referred to as your discount rate. If there's a known note or something that has a dependable, predictable rate over a certain amount of time, you will buy it at a discount, and that way you'll get it out later at that value, that $3,000 value. Are there any questions with present value? It's a known value of money that you want later in today's value. You're just taking into the cost of money and your interest rates and inflation and those types of things. $1 today isn't worth $1 tomorrow. That's why they also say, if anybody on here wins the lottery, what do? Do you take the annuity that they give you every year, or do you take the lump sum now?
Lump sum.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the finance folks would say, take the lump sum now, because you won $1 million. Well, although it's a lot of money, trust me, even 20 years from now is going to be a lot of money, but so $1 million today is different than $1 million 20 years from now. So you take the money now and let it work for you over time because of the present value of the money. Good. All right, here's that thing we talked about, right? Net present value. This is another one. Don't get tied up on the formula. It's not going to ask, I don't think it's going to ask you to calculate what the net present value is. You just need to know what it is, and we're going to go over that here now. So the net present value is a financial tool that is used in capital budgeting. It is the present value of all cash outflows minus the present value of all cash inflows. I'll say it again. It's the present value of all cash outflows minus the present value of all cash inflows that are in the future. The net present value compares the value of $1 today to the value of the same dollar in the future after taking inflation and discount rate into account. So what does it all mean? So what we're looking for is whenever we go through, and I think this is actually one of the important measures of our company in determining what projects you're going to select for a particular time. They look at net present value. Whenever you're proposing ideas, remember they have those challenges at AT&T that says, hey, come up with an idea and propose it, and everybody, all your peers vote on it, and the winning one, does this or that, whatever, and they get a great opportunity. Well, what they're looking at is they're going to look at your net present value. If your net present value is less than zero, our finance folks are going to say, nope, not even a chance. It needs to be greater than zero. It needs to be a positive number. The only way that's going to be approved is a project at AT&T. That's what you need to know. If you have a project that with, again, the exam is going to say something to the effect of, if you have a net present value, if you have, 3 competing projects, and based on your analysis, you are expecting to have net present value of 1, a net present value of -1, and a net present value of 5, which project would you select? Well, you select the one that's 5, the highest one. Right? Or which project would you exclude? Well, the one that's below 0 is what you would exclude, those types of things. Does that make sense? Don't ask me to explain what all these things are, right? It's just saying the way that it looks on a table, right, is you're going to spend, you got options. You say, is it worth me spending $100,000 on this piece of machinery, right? Or this tool? Well, they say, well, if we bought it today, what would you, based on the lifetime of this tool, let's call it 5 years or 10 years, what would you expect your income to be? Well, we would expect it to be, I don't know, 20 grand a month. I don't know, whatever. Well, what you're doing is you're taking the discount rate, and would be that 10 years, and you're taking the discount rate that is predefined. They'll define something, the company would have something, and you're working that out to say, well, the net present value of that, based on today's dollars, is this. It's going to be that. So they would be able to choose, as long as it's greater than 0, it's a profitable project. That's the important part. Greater than 0 is good. Internal rate of return. The internal rate of return is also a financial tool used in capital budgeting. It is the interest rate that makes the net present value of all cash flow equal 0. So really what it is you're solving for this right here. You're creating net present value equals 0, and you're solving for that discount rate. Same thing. What happens is you're looking at, this is going to be a percentage. It's an interest rate, a percent. The other one is a value. This one is going to be a percent. And it's going to be, if it's greater than the alternative, your other opportunities, it's going to be selected and good. I don't know if there's a value like net present value greater than 0 is great, is always profitable. With this one, it depends on, the cost of capital for the company. It depends on some different things that might be predefined with our finance folks that say, hey, listen, here's the deal. Anything that has an internal rate of return lower than, 8% isn't going to be profitable for us as a company, right? So they'll take a look at it. I don't know. I know the company uses net present value to make decisions on where to spend money. I don't know if, I think internal rate of return by itself is a little unreliable, but they may use it with net present value. So again, this one, you're looking for the highest internal rate of return. Or they're going to say, in the exam, an example would be, I don't know, if the company's cost of capital is 10%, and based on the value or based on the analysis, you guys expect the internal rate of return for a project to be 8%, would you pursue that project? Something like that, I don't know. Or which project would you pursue? 8%, 10%, 12%, 2%, something like that. You select the one that's over your opportunity. I believe that's how you guys, go ahead, please.
I was going to say, this almost sounds very close to the break-even point.
Actually, your internal rate of return is your break-even point.
Right.
That is where your net present value equals 0. That is the break-even point. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Anything above that, your break-even point would be any rate above that point is going to be profitable. So, that's great observation. Net Promoter Score measures a customer's willingness to recommend a provider's service, products or services. NPS is simply calculated as the percent of promoters minus the percent of detractors, with the resulting index of -100 to 100. Higher scores indicate customer delight, and lower ones are not delight. They're detractors are 0 to 6, promoters are 9 to 10. I don't know what type of question is going to be, I don't know what type of question on the exam list to cover.
I had a question about this one since you specifically mentioned it earlier. You said you had, I believe, a friend or a colleague that said NPS was a waste of time. Why? Why did they feel that way?
Well, because what his argument was is these passives are people too. We're completely ignoring them and ignoring that opportunity because we're so focused on detractors and promoters. What about all these people that maybe, I don't know, all these 7/8s or whatever it is. I don't know if this is the same scale AT&T uses or not. It doesn't seem like it. I feel like the detractors, I feel like the passives were a larger range at AT&T, but that's what his argument was. All these people were missing these opportunities here. How do you get them into a detractor or a promoter? There should be specific opportunities there. That's what his argument was.
Thank you.
Yeah, that whole group. Now, on the other side, there are, I think all of our competitors are using the Net Promoter Score as well, and we're all measuring ourselves on a similar benchmark, a similar scale that we can, outside of just the financials, we're looking at the qualitative stuff. What do people think about us and our products? This is a way to measure that. Everybody is missing out on the passives, right? So it's not to say that it's not, I don't know. He has, I didn't spend a lot of time talking to him about it, but I do know that that's where his position was. So, thanks for the question, though. Not important for the test, by the way, that extra add-in, just an interesting perspective. Again, I don't know what could possibly come up. Has anyone had a test or had an exam prep item that touched base on Net Promoter Score? It could give us kind of a gist of a sample question, because I don't have one. All right, let's move on. A/B testing. Many times, different approaches to solving a problem are available, and the project team may want to get feedback from real users. This might mean asking for user preferences on how to do certain things, or which approach they prefer. For example, Different approaches might result in different outcomes, such as click-through rates or sales conversions. One way to do this, borrowed from the marketing universe, is called A/B testing. In A/B testing, different sets of users are showed similar services with one difference known as the independent variable. For example, you might change the color or position of a button on a website to see if people behave differently based on the different options. As a result of A/B testing, you can optimize the solution to use the most effective approach based on the result of the experiment. Anybody have an example or a story on A/B testing? How about anybody? Is there anybody here on website design or marketing that? Okay. Again, another one of those things, just know what it is. Monte Carlo simulation. This is an analysis technique where a computer model is iterated many times with the input values chosen at random for each iteration driven by the input data, including probability distributions and probabilistic branches. Outputs are generated to represent the range of possible outcomes for the project. I would imagine that another sample question would be, what types of tools are used in making project decisions or that type of a thing? You know, which tool, which is not a tool that is used, you know what I mean? That type of stuff. So just knowing what these things are and they're used for analysis and helps us make decisions, I think is your value add, your biggest takeaway here. Simulation is a technique that uses computer models and estimates of risk to translate uncertainties. Listen, by the way, this simulations and Monte Carlo simulation, these are not manual paper pen things. They're a very sophisticated program. Actually, I think Excel does both of these, simulation and Monte Carlo simulation. This isn't something that you would have a formula. It would be impossible to do this. So just know that there are programs, software programs, most immediately available would be Excel to run these. A project simulation uses a model that translates project uncertainties into their potential impact on project objectives. The project model is run many times with different variables to calculate a probability distribution. All right. How about we talk about decision trees? So a decision tree analysis is a diagramming and calculation technique for evaluating the implications of a chain of multiple options in the presence of uncertainty. Decision trees allow decision makers to evaluate both the probability and impact of each branch of every decision under consideration, making it a useful tool for risk analysis. Solving the decision tree indicates a decision that will provide the greatest expected value when all the uncertain implications, costs, rewards, and subsequent decisions are quantified. So we have vendor A, we have vendor B, we have vendor C. What this is telling us is there's a probability here. We're going to get into the expected monetary value in 1 second, but I want to do something, right? So we've got a probability of best case or worst case, best case, worst case for each of those, right? We're trying to make a decision which of these are going to be the best opportunity. Best case is 60% probability, 40% is based on historical data. You've worked with these people before, you know this is their general trend. Or maybe this industry before or something. Well, they assign an impact value to that. I don't know. The impact value is going to be something that would be delivered by our finance folks or some data point, right? It's nothing that's part of a formula of anything that you see here. Trust me, I looked. I couldn't figure out where the hell they got these values from. 200,000, negative 50,000. I couldn't figure it out. I just know now that it's just a value that's determined by the folks that are evaluating this. So then what happens, right, is You take your probability and your impact, you end up with a value. And this allows you to look at the best case and the worst case for every scenario, every vendor in this case, to make an informed decision. And here's what it looks like. So expected monetary value is that EMV that we talked about. It's a method of calculating the average outcome when the future is uncertain. So it's probability times impact. So what happens here is you've got a 60% probability that has, with the best case, which would result in $200,000 impact. P times I is 120. I believe that the exam may, and we'll see some sample questions here in a second, they may ask you to calculate EMV. And we're going to go over an example of how that happens. So know what EMV is, right? 120, but you got a 40%, the worst case, right? It equals 100%. You know, you got a 100% chance, 60% favors best case, 40% here. You know, vendor B is the opposite, best case 40%, worst case 60%. Down here, vendor C, they've got a 70% probability of having an $80,000 impact, a 30% probability, which would be a negative $20,000 impact. You get all these values, and then what do you do with it? All right, well, you determine your EMV values, and here's what it looks like. So you look at your net EMV before costs, which would be these costs here. Ignore those for a minute. So what you want to look at is vendor A, vendor B, vendor C, that's what these mean. Vendor A has a $100,000 net EMV, right? How did we get that? Well, we took our probability and the impact. They'll never, I don't think they're going to ask you to, they're going to give you what that impact value is. They're going to say, well, figure out the impact. That's something that's predefined. That's a specific item for a company or a task or whatever. So you $120,000 here. You had a 40% worst case with a negative $50,000. So you got a negative $20,000 here. Take the difference or add them together, and you've got a $100,000 EMV. Vendor B did the same thing, a $22,000 EMV. Vendor C, a $50,000 EMV. So what do you think you choose based on that? Yeah. Vendor A, positive EMV is always best. The highest EMV is the one you choose. They call it the safest option. Okay. EMV has to be calculated. You can't look at this and make an informed decision without calculating EMV and getting your net EMV values. You simply can't.
I need to ask what I think is a dumb question, but the best case 60 and the worst case 40 and how they change going down the chart, is that a standard, or is that them that is making the vendor that's making the assumptions there? It's
the company that's hiring the vendors, and they do this best case, worst case based on historical information. How has the company, how has that vendor performed before?
Okay. Okay. That makes a little bit more sense.
It's informed.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
It's informed. Yeah. Any more questions, please? Anyone not understand the formula for E? If you don't take anything away from me today, please take this away. We're going to go over some examples to really drill it home. Anyone not understand EMV? How to calculate EMV? You're not going to, I could say this probably with confidence. You're not going to be asked to calculate what the probability is. You're not going to be asked to calculate what the impact value is. I believe they'll be provided for you. What you will be asked is because in the context of this tool as a decision-making asset, you'll have to know how to make a decision using a decision tree and the expected monetary value. So you've got to know that if you stop to this after these circles here, you get no value out of this tool. You have to have your EMV, and you have to calculate your net EMV. Now, in the PMBOK, that's where they stop. So they may say, this is an example of where they'll throw you. I looked everywhere else, and I'll apologize to everybody next Wednesday if I find out that I'm wrong with this. I'm sitting here wondering, so why doesn't $100,000 make a difference? They're going to spend $100,000 here. They're going to spend $120,000 there, and then $90,000. Why don't these these values matter? Well, they don't in this decision because, again, the impacts were provided, the probability was provided, and we simply used EMV to make the decision. I would imagine, I would not be surprised if the question would be framed around something like vendor A has a bid of $100,000 and they give you this tree, and they have a probability and an impact, probability of this and an impact of that. And vendor B has a bid of $120,000 with a probability impact of this, whatever. Which vendor is best to be chosen? Well, this $100,000 and $120,000, they don't mean anything. This is what matters. That other stuff. That's the type of stuff that you'll see on the exam. That makes sense? I have seen through different resources that I don't know if they're credible or not yet. That's why I didn't add it to this analysis. I did see where they added this. They subtracted the net EMV from the actual cost, but I don't understand the value of that yet enough to speak to it. And I don't think it adds value to our discussion, but there's something there that I just don't know yet. Just again, I don't think I know that in the context of the PMBOK right now, they don't even use this. This is where the decision is made. Okay? So listen, that's it. So let's go over some questions, okay? I need some participation. We've got 7 questions, and I'll give you guys some time back. Let me ask one more time, though. Are there any questions? You're doing yourself a disservice right now by not asking, please. I'm asking, please let me know if you have any questions on probability to impact and how that might work in this context. I'm happy to help walk through that again.
It seems pretty clear. I mean,
okay. Thank you.
I don't know about anybody else, but
okay. Thank you for that.
Whoever has the highest one.
That's right. That's right. And that's the takeaway. The highest net EMV, the highest NPV, right? The highest IRR. You know, those are the types of things that we're looking for. So thank you for that. All right, let's go over some questions now, okay? Question 1, using the table, this little graphic will be here on every slide. There's 7 questions and they all have to do with this same graphic. Which analysis technique was used in the image to determine the most cost-effective choice of an external consultant? Is that a decision tree? Is it simulation? Is it Delphi? Is it diagramming? Okay, I see a lot of A's. Anybody challenge A, please? I'm seeing a lot of A's, a lot of A's, a lot of A's. Okay, good job. Nice work. Question 2, what is the probability that vendor A will complete on time? Is it 60%, 50%, 40%, 70%? Remember the formula. Remember where things are. What is the probability that vendor A will complete on time? Seeing C's, seeing 40%. Anybody challenging C? I've got C's and C's and C's. Before I give the answer, is anyone completely lost with that question? We'll go through it together.
Second, I was, but then I read the question again and I realized that it's not asking me to do the whole formula, I mean, the math, just asking me what vendor A is doing. So.
That's right. Great observation, Jessica. I would imagine you're going to run into that on the exam too. Make sure you read the question. Yep. All right. So, well, the answer is 40% right here. Best case, vendor A, best case. Next, what is the probability that vendor B will run over the allotted time for the project? 50%, 60%, 70%, 40%.
50.
Sounds good. That's it. That one's an easy one. Okay, here we go now. What is vendor C's EMV, expected monetary value? What is vendor C's expected monetary value? That's how it was written. Let me add the word net in there. I don't think you're going to ever use one alone. So $10,300, $1,700, $0, or $200. Is there anyone on the call that is completely lost with that question that could use a walkthrough? We can do this together.
Hi, Will.
Yes.
So I am getting the questions based on what we're asking. I'm getting the same answers, but I wouldn't mind a walkthrough.
Sure. Okay. All right. So let's do the walkthrough then. We talked about net, EMV, expected monetary value, right? EMV is probability times impact. So but the other side of the equal sign is that value. So what happens is when you're making a decision, you've got to look at both of those, and it's the sum of those. So up here, the sum of P times I for the best case, and the sum of P times I for the worst case, if you add them together, it's $1,800. That would be your net EMV. You still with me, Mona?
Yep.
Okay. So down here for vendor B, best case, P times I, 3,500. Worst case, P times I is minus 500. Net EMV, $3,000. Everyone with me? Again, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter why it's, or how it's 50%. It doesn't matter how it's $7,000 or $1,000 impact. It doesn't matter. It's simply knowing how to use the chart to make a decision. Then we get to the actual question. Vendor C's EMV. Best case is P times I, 900. Worst case, P times I, negative 700. $200 is the correct answer. Good?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right. You know what? There's only 5 questions, guys. Sweet. All right, here we go. Here's where it all comes together. Last question. Your team combines each vendor's EMV and costs. You want to choose the vendor bid with the most economic advantage for your organization. Based on this number, which vendor should you choose? We just went through them all.
B.
Seeing a lot of B's, and nobody's challenging that? Shelly screamed out, what? You happy about that? Must have been the 5 question instead of 7 comment that I made. Yeah. You're saying, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I don't see anybody doing anything but B. Anyone want to challenge that, please? All right. B it is. Why is it B?
Has the highest EMV.
You got it. See where it threw that in here? Your team combines each vendor's EMV and costs. Does that make you want to think, okay, well, maybe I need to look at costs then? Nope. Use EMV to make the decision. That's the stuff you got to watch for in the exam. Oh, this is I do have 2 more. I'm sorry. Oh my gosh, I do have 2 more. Okay. I forgot about these. So you're working, this is how I think the questions are going to read. I was excited about this one. This is how I think they'll read. You may have a diagram like this to some degree, but I think this is what you'll see more of. You are working with the project manager for a construction project. One of the identified risks within the project has a 20% chance of happening. So what is that in the EMV formula? If it's a chance of happening, is it the P or the I? P. If risk occurs, it will cost your project an additional $150,000. What is the EMV for this risk event? Is it A? Is it B? Is it C? Is it D? Who can tell me the formula again for EMV?
Probability times impact.
That's right. So we're multiplying 0.2 times the $150,000, which equals?
B, 30 grand.
B is the right answer. Gosh, I'd give you $1 million, but we're virtual. I just can't get it to you. Sorry about that. Okay. Final question. You are managing a graphic design and, oh, let me do this. Anyone have any questions on A? Did anyone want to go through A? I want to make sure that we give that opportunity, please. Okay. Final question, I promise this time. You are managing a graphic design and print project. There is a 30% chance that the paper you are using will be too thin and you'll have to reprint the presentation, which will cost you an extra $5,000. There's also a 20% chance that the high capacity ink cartridges you are using will last longer than you expect, which will save you $1,000. What is your expected monetary value? Take Bitcoin for the $1 million virtually. That's fine. I was on the Dogecoin boat for a while, but decided to jump ship. So probably right after it jumped up. I don't want to talk about it. Okay, so we've got percentages here and we have dollar values here, right? You know, an EMV, the percentage are the probabilities, your dollar signs, your dollar values are your impact. So when you take a look at that, what do we get? 4,200, negative 1,300, negative 1,500. I'm seeing a lot of C's. Anyone want to challenge C? Anyone want to walk through it? Are we good with this now? Because C is the correct answer. Your EMV of the first event, 0.30 times 5,000 is 1,500. Event 2, 0.20 times 1,000 is 200. The difference, or the sum, is negative 1,300. So that is it. That's all I got. Sorry. Learning goals. Today, we determined the necessary approach and action to address compliance needs, and we evaluated delivery options to achieve benefits and values. On Wednesday, we'll go through the bottom three. So, what questions do we have on anything that we talked about today? Anything resonate with anybody? All right. You know, hey, here's the thing. I've heard, Shelley, about brain dumps. I've had a handful of people that have recently passed or completed their PMP exam say that there was no need for a brain dump. When I took it, I think this is an individual decision, an individual preference. When I took it, man, I felt like I had every formula. This is 07, 15 years ago, 14 years ago. I feel like I had an entire sheet that I had to take a picture of in my mind and just brain purge and go for the first 15 minutes, write all my formulas because it was needed. I only have a small sample of folks that have recently passed. They're saying that they had no need for a brain dump. What they did say is they took multiple, at least 2 full 4-hour sittings of a practice exam. I've also heard that they had, whenever they took even the short practice exams, whenever you start scoring at or over 80% consistently, you're about ready to go. About ready. Did that add any value to anybody? I'm sure there's other facilitators that have mentioned that as well. There has been nobody that has passed this exam in the this year from these groups that has said they did not have to take any practice exams. Nobody. The ones that scored higher, right? You immediately get your score. Whenever I took it, thank you, Deandra, for confirming that. When I took it 15 years ago, I got a congratulations, you passed. I didn't get my results until, I would say, the last 5 years, the last few years, because they changed the way that it looks now. They changed the way you guys will get your immediate, you'll know in each domain how you scored, average, above average, below average, whatever, all the way across the board. The ones that have scored above average, and they're certainly not, well, they're very humble people, first of all. They're just really, both of them that did that I've heard of, said they took 2 full sittings, 2 full 4-hour sittings with breaks, full deal, to go through this thing and score it. They did 2 of them. I don't know what tool they used. Maybe, I don't remember, but they did 2 of them. All right, what other questions or comments? And then we'll go.
That's good to know. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure. My pleasure. All right. Okay, guys, you got me again on Wednesday, and then that's your last class like this. And then you have the closing session, which I would imagine, I hope, is going to be, what do you guys want to talk about? But if you're asked what you want to talk about, someone please say, can we go over some practice questions for 2 hours? Let's all talk about it together. Think about it. You got 2 hours to go over practice stuff. Please, someone mention that on that closing session. I think it will be incredibly helpful to you. And while the facilitator probably won't have access to the questions, someone on this call has access to that, the PMI version of that practice exam or exam prep questions or whatever it is. I forgot what it was called. Someone has access into that and is using it. Offer that up, please. I'll see if I can try to figure out who might have access to that. I don't know. Prepcast. I think that's it, Tina. I think you're right.
I have access to it.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah, and all you do is you'll just go through questions. Question one, and then everyone will just like we did here. Everybody think. Give it a couple seconds. Everyone will say, okay, and here's the answer. Then it tells you why. Here's why it was the best choice, which is incredibly helpful. Why? Okay. All right, guys and gals. Any questions, please?
I was going to say I think Jessica wrote something about to apply to take the test. Like I definitely have questions in regards to that. So definitely want to know answers for it. When will I be able to submit my application? Because currently I can't submit my application. I have not completed the 35 hours of this course. According to that, like I have questions for that aspect, like quickly can I apply for it?
Sure.
So I'm with Jessica there.
Yeah, so I can check on that. You may ask Brian Barry as well, but I'll have to check on that. I would imagine you'll get a certificate after you complete this. Like I said, it's a little bit different than what I'm used to, and I'm sorry for that. But I would imagine you'll have verification of your contact hours. So we can ask Brian Barry about that one. When would you be able to do that? Now, as far as the application process, there was a resource that was just shared. You guys can see my screen. Resource team section, resources. Oh, look, here's PMP Prepcast Simulator right here. Sweet. I'll have to figure out files. Their application process template. Let me see what this is. Just in case that adds value to you guys, I can make sure you get it. Crystal Baker was the backup last Wednesday or Monday or whatever time you guys had me. She uploaded this. Here's your education tab. Here is your experience tab.
Oh my God, I totally missed it. It is looking like the new exam. Ooh. That's good, thank you.
PMP experience worksheet.
That's just to put your own personal experience in.
Yeah.
I didn't see
this
that
would
one
be where
either.
you got to tally up these hours.
That's pretty much what
It's
your PMP sidekick, your PM sidekick, it has like an Excel sheet. So you go ahead and fill that out, and it has, you put in, when you worked on it, and it tallies it up for you. So
yeah.
that was nice.
I'll tell you the secret that I used, guys, when I did mine was you have 2,080 working hours in a year. So please use that. And what I did was I tried to put, it's hard to say 10 hours here, 5 hours here, 4 hours on that domain, whatever. I did a percentage of my time for that project. I was generally here, a percentage that, and then you base it on 2,080 working hours in a year. That helps mitigate.
It actually just asks you now for the months that you worked on it. It's not getting down to that detail for the hours. So that was really cool because only with 3 projects, I was able to get the amount of hours. Or the amount of months, I should say. Yeah.
Okay,
so
good.
Your PM sidekick is really cool.
Yep, and you don't have to break it out by category anymore. So it's just overall.
That's great. I was audited.
Oh, that's why I wanted to see that about application audits. But it says, this is what you're supposed to say. Just keep it to this. You get 550 words. I said, but you don't need it. Just follow this template. and because they're not interested in what you did, like, and step away from your company's jargon. They're interested in what you manage, which was really good. It really simplified it for me. So I thought it was a really great tool.
So you guys have a separate link. Can you share that information, Jessica?
I put it in the chat.
Oh, good. Okay, perfect. I just don't know if after this, I don't know what happens to it after this. Everybody go in the chat and look. I just know if you guys have a Microsoft Teams thing, or you guys have another chat room that you're using that you might be able to use that as well outside of the course room here. My audit process was kind of sucked because I had to go find the people that I listed as my managers during that time, and I had to have them sign a form. They were all over the stinking place. I had to go find them, have them sign a form, put it in an envelope that PMI didn't even send me. By the way, this is after I paid the $500 to take the exam. They say, "Thank you for your payment. You have been selected for an audit." I had to go find the people that managed.
Here's a smack in the face.
Yeah, find the people that was managing me, have them sign or attest on this form, sign it, close the envelope, sign their name over the seal, over the little flap, the proof, right? And then I had to take all those forms, there were like 5 or 6 or 7 or whatever, put them all in an envelope and then send it to PMI. I got through it. I didn't lie about anything, right? I was honest, but it's a random thing. I was just randomly selected for an audit. So again, I don't know what this is 15 years ago. I don't know what it is now, but there you go. Hopefully it's a little different now. I don't know that there's anything I really do believe, unless you guys challenge me, that the audit, I don't know that maybe there's something obvious that they can say, oh, well, this is what do you mean you had 5,000 hours working that year? This is a little awkward. But for the most part, it's random. This is a random selection. Cool. Anything else, guys? I wish I had more stuff to add value to.
I have a question. I clicked on that link. I got a website, but I don't see what exactly you do once you're on the website. What are you looking for?
Did you take another?
I clicked on the top, your PMP sidekick, and then the PMP application template.
You didn't take.
Then.
Oh, I see it. Okay.
Huh?
I see it now.
I thought you said you took one this morning.
Okay.
Yesterday morning. You didn't take one this morning.
Everybody have that link? Everybody good?
Yes. Thank you so much.
One a day unless.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay. Is there anything else you guys want to add today, please? Sorry about my mistakes early on here. Let me get rid of this recording too, by the way. Let's stop the recording.